Shalom, and welcome to the next edition of RavPod. Over the course of the summer, we've been studying Pirkei Avot. And one of the more well-known and often quoted Mishnayot in Pirkei Avot talks about habits, mitzvah goreret mitzvah, avera goreret avera, that the performance of one mitzvah can lead to the performance of others. And conversely, the performance of a sin can lead to the performance of other sins. In essence, what the scholar of that Mishnah teaches is that behavior, trends, attitudes are really in our own control. If we make good choices, sometimes even if they're difficult to make, the more good choices we make, whether they are mitzvot or otherwise, good choices create trends and habits and make it easier for us to make good choices and better choices going forward. Similarly, when we cave into our weaker instincts, whether it might be a sin or something that is simply not in our own personal or social best interests, giving in today makes it easier to give in tomorrow. It becomes a downward cascade. And that's really what the Mishnah meant with avera, goreret avera. One sin leads to another. As I mentioned, not specifically a sin, but a poor choice can lead to further poor choices and even worsening choices. Habits, trends, that's the message of the Mishnah. We can take that Mishnah as a frame to the opening aliyah in this week's Shabbat Parsha, RavPod Ki Teitze, because the opening of the Parsha has trends. Three passages, the first three paragraphs, seem to indicate a trend based on choices. Number one, Ki Teitze la milchama alevecha, when a soldier, a warrior, might be called into battle to defend his people and homeland. Perhaps he will find in his journeys away from home a woman for whom he lusts. Not a Jewish woman, not a relative, definitely not someone from his family. We call these war brides. And he yearns and he lusts and he wants, and the Torah allows him perforce to bring this war bride home. We don't need to talk about what the impact might be on the family dynamics, what his wife might feel like, the confusion that will be brought to his children. Does the Torah allow it? The Torah condones it, because the Torah cannot control the choices we make as individuals. The second part of the Parsha deals with an individual, a man who might have two firstborns, a firstborn from his original wife and a firstborn from his second wife, presumably the war bride. And we know that how an estate is inherited by heirs has at least the halachic consideration of firstborns, who gets how many portions, how is the estate divided, and even independent of the halacha that we call pi shnayim. We can only imagine what kind of dysfunction and rivalry could ensue as an estate is being settled and different children, perhaps from different marriages, have different claims on the estate. At a time of mourning, there could also be family conflict. The third parsha in these trifecta that make up the Kohen Aliyah is the story of the Ben Sorer Umora, the stubborn and rebellious child who doesn't heed the admonishments, the discipline, the warning, the training, the guidance of his parents. And how can it be that in a house where there is love and parenting, there can be such a child who refuses to abide, to learn from parents, and to grow? If not, perhaps the home where the marriage was compromised and where sibling rivalry is unbridled. There are sages, classical sources, who look at the first 3 paragraphs of this week's Parsha, the Kohen Aliyah, and suggest that these are not 3 independent cases, but really a cascading of problems, all the result of a bad choice. Think about that frame again. Mitzvah goreret mitzvah, avera goreret avera. If this warrior had more self-discipline in the beginning, perhaps his family life would have been more stable, more loving. And if that was the case, perhaps the children would have been more amenable to watching the role modeling of parents, heeding the teachings of parents, and growing to be pride in their families. We are at a season now, almost halfway through the month of Elul, and we're focusing, sharpening our attention as we prepare for the coming holidays. We don't walk into Rosh Hashanah cold. We don't fast on Yom Kippur without some spiritual preparation. And perhaps the timing of this Parsha at this season reminds us of the responsibility we have to ourselves and the impact of our choices, not only on who we are and how we are perceived, but how what we do impacts the lives of others. Mitzvah goreret mitzvah. When we make good choices, we improve our own qualities of life, and most probably we're also improving the quality of the lives of people whose paths cross ours. Avera goreret avera. But when we make poor choices, probability exists that they will have a negative impact on people who are counting on us, on people who are looking up to us. We like to think of our choices as part of our freedoms, part of our liberties. We get to decide what it is that we want to do. And the answer will always be yes, we do get to decide. Let us be reminded by the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot and the opening lesson in this week's Parsha that while we do have the privilege of choice, let us not forget that every decision we make impacts the lives of the people who are closest to us. And if we care about their existences, their lives, then let us demonstrate that sensitivity by the choices we make with our own. Everyone have a wonderful week. Looking forward to a great Shabbat, and thank you for your time today.